Tribalism. A word we're probably all very familiar with. But what is it exactly? Tribalism refers to humans forming social groups and identifying with them based on a shared identity, values, and goals, and it has deep roots in our evolutionary history as humans. But how does this apply to our beloved wrestling industry? For years, WWE was the only game in town, but in 2019, A.I.W came along, providing a much-needed alternative to a very stale Vince McMahon-led product. This created a divide between fans about which was better, which was more popular, and brought out some extreme behaviours on social media. But why does this happen? What can be done to combat tribalism, and can't we all just get along? Oh, I can't believe we're doing this. Stick around, we're going to talk about it.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to A.I.W, the Artificial Intelligence Wrestling Show, where the insight is deep thanks to a little help from a digital friend. The following podcast is a triple threat match scheduled for however many hours. Introducing first, from Mount Olympus, the honorary Zeus! Next, from the cave at the end of time, Kronus the Bear! And their opponent, from the internet, A.I. Jeff!
Hello and welcome back to A.I.W, Artificial Intelligence Wrestling. I am the honorary Zeus.
I'm Kronus the Bear.
Kronus the Bear's back with me. A.I. Jeff's back as well after a 2-day sabbatical. He's had his little career break. So he's...
recuperation.
Yeah, he had a bit of a rest. He's back with a vengeance today. Because we are talking wrestling tribalism. Some might say a controversial topic these days, with WWE and A.I.W going head-to-head, should we say.
Yeah. For real coming up as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the old network battle on the Tuesday Night War. I'm sure that'll be completely rational.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're talking about wrestling tribalism. By the way, guys, if you like the content, there's a little red button in the bottom right of the video screen. Just hit that one, give us a subscribe, give us a like if you do like the content. And in the comments, let us know your thoughts on wrestling tribalism. So we know wrestling tribalism is very rife in social media, largely between WWE and A.I.W, but there are some extensions of that, which we'll go into. Kronus, what are your kind of initial thoughts? I know you don't spend a lot of time on social media. You're probably the wisest out of all of us.
I don't know about wise, but...
You're not exposed to it as much as a lot of people. But from what you know of it and, you know, the whole, especially since it became kind of WWE and A.I.W, what are your sort of thoughts on people's behaviors?
I mean, it seems silly just to trash the other thing just because you like yours. It doesn't make it crap. You know, it's subjective. That's the word.
Yeah.
I liken it to way back in the day when all I used to listen to was thrash metal and nothing else, and everything else was shit, even if I hadn't even heard it. But now I've sort of changed that outlook from it's not shit, it's just I don't like it.
Yeah, it's just not for you, and that's fine.
Yeah, doesn't make it crap.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good example in the music example, because obviously, as I'm sure many people know, tribalism in itself sort of predates modern society. You know, we're talking thousands and thousands of years. So I thought I'd start with just kind of going over a brief history of tribalism. I say brief, very brief. I'm not going to go over 200,000 years of history. Don't worry about that.
Tribalism through the years.
Tribalism through the years.
Zeus.
All their greatest hits. And no, tribalism is not worshipping Roman Reigns, although that would be cool.
Tribal chiefism.
That's tribal
easily
chiefism.
Confused.
Yeah, very, very big distinction there. So tribalism is, if you think of it from an evolutionary context, as in how we evolved. So all of our ancestors, we all lived in small groups where things like cooperation, coordination, social skills were basically essential for survival. And the phenomenon known as natural selection, it favored things like, empathy, communication, cooperation, etc., which contributed to us being tribal because it helped us evolve. And we've we, as humans, we keep that throughout all of our existence, because without tribalism, there wouldn't be any wrestling to enjoy. We wouldn't be here to enjoy wrestling because we probably would have died out. So that's, from an evolutionary perspective, sort of where tribalism sort of comes from, and it stems from our kind of societal existence. In terms of how it manifests in humans itself, it's all about the brain. So like everything you see, do, hear, think, experience, everything you ever experience is all through the brain. And tribalism is no different. So what happens in tribalism is we perceive others as part of our group, in inverted commas. And that applies to everything, politics, music. Me and Kronus, you and I are big football fans in the UK. There's a lot of vicious tribalism between football teams, especially up in Scotland. And it's everywhere. And when we perceive others as part of our quote unquote group, it activates our brain's reward system, which links to things like loyalty and preference. And it also activates our empathy, which means that when we see someone as part of our group, then that helps our brain promote compassion and cooperation towards said person. Don't worry, we'll get to how this affects wrestling in a minute. Might have already figured it out. And then we have things like how those two fit together. So group identity and the brain function. So the big one here, especially in terms of wrestling and modern day social media, is that there have been loads of studies done on the brain that have shown that things like symbols that are associated with our groups also activate the same systems in our brain. So team logos, political systems. It's why marketing is so important these days. And it's why people pay. You wonder why, TV companies pay so much for things like ad revenue. It's because things like logos, political emblems, they activate something in the brain. And this works with tribalism as well. So, for example, let's use a wrestling example. Let's get to the point, shall we? If you, for example, are a diehard WWE fan and you hate A.I.W, you don't even watch it, you just hate it because it exists. And you see somebody with a wrestling opinion who has a WWE profile picture, then instantly your brain recognizes that as part of your group, and it activates all these little things in your brain, and it releases various hormones in the brain, and these obviously flow through your brain and enhance recognition, pleasurable experiences that all relate to this group identity. And a lot happens in a very short space of time that we don't even realize it. And I know this makes us sound like we're not in control, and there is a tiny bit of truth to that. But millions of things are happening in the brain in that example I just gave, when that person sees wrestling opinion, WWE profile picture, and before he's even thought about it, you react, and tribalism ensues. So back to the kind of how we sort of evolved in tribalism. So there were groups, obviously intergroups back in the tribal days, where loyalty was rewarded because loyal members were more successful in the group. And this led to biases favoring group loyalty. And this exists in all groups. Like you said, Kronus, music, there's still a lot of music elitism out there. Politics, we see it every day. We're seeing it in the UK here right now with all the rioting and stuff. That is very us versus them.
Yeah. A bit much, but yeah.
Yeah, and it goes towards race, social justice. It goes to everything. So tribalism persists throughout life because of our brain's nature. The evolutionary context and how significant it is towards group identity. And we know that tribalism can have positive effects because we are here today. Nations were built because of tribalism. So many great things have been done. But obviously we've seen it can lead to lots of bad things like ethnic hatred, conflict, when taken to extremes. So, wrestling. I think with wrestling, I don't know if you'd agree, Kronus. With wrestling, I would say, if I could give a hot take, I don't think tribalism is the problem with wrestling. I think social media is the problem.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't really have as much tribalism. I don't think you would. There's not the platform for it. Absolutely right. Yeah.
No, because like if you take the example for the racially aggravated riots that are taking place at the moment, you don't really see that in wrestling, do you? No. You wouldn't see a riot because WWE signed the Lucha Brothers. You know what I mean? It doesn't exist in the real world, does it? In terms of,
No.
I mean, how many times do you hear, it might happen, but how many times do you hear widespread reports of massive fighting between WWE and A.I.W fans outside of arenas?
I haven't.
It just doesn't happen, does it?
No.
So social media obviously is the big thing, has been for a number of years. And the problem with social media, amongst many problems it has, is that for a start, it creates a veil of anonymity. So you can sign up for an account, you can be completely anonymous, for some for good reason, and some for, like, it's completely fine to be anonymous on social media, as long as you're not using that to cause trouble and be antagonistic deliberately or harass people, be horrifically offensive, etc. But it does give you that option. And it also takes away the natural human emotions that we develop when we meet people in person. So if we take a wrestling conversation, for example, if you got Tribalist A, let's call him Bob, he loves A.I.W, right? He hates WWE, hates the Fed. And then you got Tribalist B, let's call him Jim, and he loves WWE, hates A.I.W. And they interact on social media. And you end up with a huge thread of insults. You live in your mum's basement, blah, blah, blah. The usual suspects. The problem is that if you interact with someone like that, and it becomes that sort of debate, the only thing you know about that person is their opinion on wrestling. Whereas in reality, there could be many things about that person that you really like, and they could agree with you on literally everything else, to the point where a wrestling opinion wouldn't really matter. But because the only interactions on social media you have, that's the only thing you're exposed to, it instantly just cuts that that bonding that humans are so used to in the real world. And we see it quite a lot. I don't know if you ever see it when you do browse social media, Kronus.
Yeah, quite a bit.
Yeah.
Mostly in comments of people who have posted a quote-unquote hot take.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hot takes. Oh, yeah, we've got something to say about hot takes shortly. So I think a lot of this comes down to, a lot of these conversations on social media that you see, they come down to, I think a lot of it comes down to a question of people want to be heard. And social media has given literally everyone in the world that platform, which I think is one of its flaws. Because I don't think we as humans are designed to be exposed to that many people, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You can see millions of people's opinions a day if you stay on Twitter long enough. Whereas you couldn't physically be surrounded by a million people in one day. It'd be too much. It's just too much. So I think a lot of this is driven by a need to be heard. And again, this is a brain influenced natural response. If you are passionate about something and somebody says something that goes against that, then it does take a lot of energy to pull yourself back from responding. Otherwise nobody would do it. And there's the hint of pride there as well. So if you pride your own opinion on something, let's say you pride X as an amazing wrestler, and then you see somebody badmouth that wrestler because they've got a WWE profile picture, then I can understand that it's very difficult to not respond, lash out, react, throw in the odd jab, be patronizing. And I think it's a lot of heated arguments start that way. So and social media, like you said, with hot takes, it's a prime example of the phrase "the squeakiest wheel gets the grease." Those who shout loudest get the most attention.
Yeah. I've never heard it put like that.
Have you not heard that phrase before? I do like it. I do like it.
It's great.
Yeah. Old friend of mine told me that years ago. I never forgot it. So now a lot of this comes down to criticism. What I've seen recently, let's say WWE and A.I.W, a lot of it comes down to criticism. In terms of negative criticism, because criticism can mean both, there's usually two types you see. That's good faith criticism and bad faith criticism. Now, I'm sure, as you all know, good faith is your honest, constructive criticism, and bad faith is your just doing it to hate and deliberately finding flaws where there might not be any. And I think this is the biggest problem. Now, if you take someone like Tony Khan, he has been quite outspoken, where he's been quite vocal, hasn't he, about how much, even today, there's an article released today where he said that he believes there are loads of people trying to sabotage A.I.W. And I think Tony Khan, historically, has, it might not be his fault, he might genuinely believe this, but I think he's taken every bit of criticism he's got as bad faith criticism, because in his mind, he knows there's a lot of tribalism out there, and he knows that A.I.W has been under the microscope since it's been a thing. So I can sort of understand that. But the hardest thing and you really have to take time, is to try and decipher what is good faith criticism and what is bad faith criticism. So a good way to spot bad faith criticism, it can take a bit of time, is somebody who constantly bashes one company or another, no matter what they do. If that makes sense.
Mm.
So let's take WWE, for example. In my opinion, they had a bit of a dull period after WrestleMania. And I was critical of it because it was boring. And then it picked up towards SummerSlam. And I praised it because I enjoyed it. Now, if somebody who absolutely loves WWE and hates A.I.W just said, everything was great, like Tony Khan says, everything's great, all the time, no matter what it is, it's great, everything's great, and at the same time, everything A.I.W does is bad, it's bad, then that's obviously a bad faith actor. Because there's no honesty, or there's no real insight into what they're saying. So you can tell bad faith from that. If you see somebody who changes their mind on one product over time, that's usually a sign of a good faith actor, because you can tell they like wrestling in general. Some things they like, some things they don't. And that's realistically where everyone should be. Do you agree, Kronus? Any thoughts?
Yeah, that's a sensible assessment.
Yeah. Now, in terms of bad faith criticism, I think this has been a big topic of discussion, and I've seen it myself even the last few days. It's when it also doesn't just apply to companies, it can apply to individual wrestlers. So if you take someone really polarizing, let's say CM Punk, I think I mentioned this on the SummerSlam predictions video we did last week, where he knows there's going to be a lot of people who don't like him because of what happened in A.I.W. And if you're an A.I.W, let's call them tribalist, if you're an A.I.W flag bearer, then you're probably going to hate someone like CM Punk because of what happened and how everything turned out. So the chances are you're going to downplay any achievement he ever has again. You're going to kind of, say everything he does is bad, it's pointless, and just try and find some way to negatively criticize. So it does also apply to individual wrestlers, because they're not part of your group anymore. Once they leave the group, the tribal group, and this was like being shunned back in the old days. And in tribal times, if you were kicked out of your tribe in evolutionary times, you die. You'd just be left out in the cold and you die. Obviously, that doesn't happen now because there's WWE you can go to, or A.I.W you can go to, or you can go get a job at Burger King or something. They didn't have many Burger Kings back in those days. So that's the kind of good faith, bad faith. It's quite easy to spot, but it can take some time because obviously if you haven't seen someone's behavior over time and you just see one comment from this person, people aren't going to go through their time. Well, actually, I say that. I've seen examples where people do that. But usually people are going to just react off of one thing you say and assume you're a tribalist. I mean, I've criticized WWE in a Twitter post and I've been accused of being an A.I.W shill just for one comment. And the same goes for A.I.W. I've criticized A.I.W because I didn't like something I saw on telly and had reams of comments saying I'm a shill and all kinds of stuff.
Fed drone.
Yeah, E-drone, yeah. And for the most part, just ignore it. Because the main thing here is arguing with these people does nothing. Literally nothing. Neither of you are going to back down. You're going to end up blocking each other. And you're going to feel angry about it. It's not like the ancient Greece days where an argument was a collective journey towards truth. That's not a thing anymore. This is just two people on social media typing angrily. Both of them are getting annoyed until one blinks first and then nothing's solved. So a lot of it is finding that restraint just to kind of, be the bigger person and walk away. So that is the good faith, bad faith situation. Now, the next bit is where it gets complicated from a social media perspective. So Twitter now has monetization, blue ticks, where you can make money based on how much engagement your activity gets on the platform. So this throws a spanner in the works because now you don't just have good faith and bad faith. You have people deliberately saying ludicrous things to make money. And we see that all the time. And I've seen there's plenty of just totally over the top pro WWE or pro A.I.W accounts on Twitter with a blue check mark. And they'll just say the most ludicrous things. And then you'll have 11,000 people in the comments saying, "Oh God, you're an idiot." It's like, you're just giving this guy money. That's all you're doing. You are just paying this guy's rent for the rest of his life. And all you're doing is getting angry. Now, with these people, it's difficult to tell because they might not genuinely think that. They might just be jumping on what's the hot topic. If you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it may even be that someone who loves WWE and hates A.I.W, he might think, well, hating A.I.W is cool at the moment. So if I do that, if he likes WWE and hates A.I.W or the other way around, he might post things that are contrary to his beliefs just because it gets more engagement, it's worth more money. So from that point of view, it's really difficult to tell. And again, with these accounts, please just ignore them. Please, for the love of God. And they are obvious. These aren't your average tribalist. You can tell. They are just, they say the most outlandish things in the world just for engagement. And it works, unfortunately. Eric Bischoff said controversy creates cash. And it definitely applies here. No such thing as bad publicity, etc. Now, it's also worth saying that you should never feel bad for having a preference. Now, you see some people who will try and hide the fact whether they like WWE or A.I.W more than the other. And I get that because it's a pretty brutal environment. So some people will try and be as neutral as possible and they won't give anything away. Now, some people will do that because they don't want to be harassed, which is perfectly understandable. And some people will do that because they have other things at play, media credentials, etc. They might be quite, high up in the industry. There might be some opportunities for them. So to them, it's worth not getting involved because it might affect their business opportunities, which is also perfectly fine. Exactly what I do. But in terms of the average wrestling fan on social media, you shouldn't have to hide if you prefer, because it's basically impossible to enjoy two things equally. Like, we are hardwired to prioritize things. How many rankings videos do you see on everything on YouTube? It's like, here's my top 10 flavors of tea. Here's my top 10 Febreze essences. How many of those you see? Well, I've actually got 2 at number 1. Never in a million years will you see that.
Yeah.
So, and this will change over time. Kronus, you and I might say, what's your favorite food? I might say chili con carne one day. I might say lasagna the other day, but it'll always just be one at any given time. And, we are hardwired to prioritize things. Most species in the world are hardwired to, create hierarchies. It's just what we do. So I don't think you should ever feel bad about preferring one or the other. And it might change over time. 2019 to probably 2022, I preferred A.I.W. Nowadays, I probably prefer WWE. Doesn't mean I hate A.I.W. But, gun to my head, I just prefer what WWE is doing at the moment because it meets what my expectations of wrestling are. And they're different to anyone else's. But it's not something that I'm going to force as my opinion. So, yeah, don't be embarrassed or ashamed to share your preference. Who knows? WWE might go down the shitter and A.I.W. might become my favorite again soon. Who knows? Oh, God. How are we doing? What were you? 25 minutes in. Oh,
Well,
Kronus, how you feeling?
I'm all right.
Yeah.
So, as I say, I don't spend a lot of time on there. Well, I browse. I'm a scroller, but a rare poster and engager, so to speak. So it's interesting to sort of hear about it in depth. It's like I'm listening to the podcast as well, kind of.
Yeah. You're like a listener. You're like a live listener.
Pretty much, yeah. Here for
By
the ride.
By the way, I'm not an evolutionary scientist or a neuroscientist, by the way. These are things that I picked up when I studied psychology. So I'm not guessing either, just to throw that out there. Bit of a disclaimer. Now, obviously, I don't think many people want to be a tribalist. But, Kronus, what would you say if A.I. Jeff had a great idea for anybody who wanted to be a tribalist?
I would hear him out.
You'd hear him out? Okay.
I think so.
Well, he's done another commercial.
He,
So this is Jeff's commercial on his new product. I'm scared. Take it away, Jeff.
Ladies and gentlemen, gather round. Are you tired of being a regular wrestling fan? Do you long for something more cringeworthy? Well, look no further. Introducing the one and only Cringe-O-Matic.
Hey, buddy, you like wrestling?
Yeah, man. I know every single move name and I've posted over 78 billion ratings on Cage Match. My opinion is ranked #1, brother.
That's right. The Cringe-O-Matic is here to take your wrestling fandom to the next level. It's like a suplex to your dignity.
But what does it do? Tell me, goddammit.
I'm glad you asked, you little cringe lord. The Cringe-O-Matic comes with a variety of features that'll make your fellow fans cringe harder than a botched finishing move. The neckbeard attachment. Get that authentic basement weller look. Comes with a free fedora and a neckbeard comb. Because nothing says I'm a wrestling aficionado like questionable facial hair. The Gruntometer. Ever wonder how many grunts you can fit into a single sentence? Wonder no more. The Cringe-O-Matic counts your grunts and displays them on a LED screen. Impress your friends with your record-breaking new count. The Sweatband of Destiny. Channel your inner macho man Randy Savage with our neon sweatband. Wear them on your wrists, ankles, or even your forehead. Bonus points if you wear them to a job interview, which we know will never happen. Stuck in a conversation? Just press the button and the Cringe-O-Matic will randomly generate a wrestling move name for you. Try dropping a casual atomic wedgie suplex or a spandex swirl at the fictional office water cooler.
But what about catchphrases?
My friend, we've got you covered. The Cringe-O-Matic includes a library of classic wrestling catchphrases. Impress your date by whispering, "Can you smell what my mom is cooking?" Or tell your boss not that you have won. "I'm gonna body slam this spreadsheet, brother."
And what if I get hungry during a match?
Fear not. The Cringe-O-Matic doubles as a pizza cutter. Just detach the foam finger and voila, perfectly sliced pepperoni. It's like Stone Cold Steve Austin meets Papa John. But wait, there's more.
There's
Order
more.
now. And we'll throw in a limited edition Cringe Championship belt. Wear it proudly as you strut down the grocery store aisle, challenging anyone who dares grab the last bag of Doritos.
I've never felt so alive, man.
So, fellow wrestling fans, don't miss out on this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Call 1-800-CRINGE-O now. Operators are standing by, wearing luchador masks and ready to take your order. Remember, with the Cringe-O-Matic, you'll be cringing your way to glory instead of a job or a girlfriend. Disclaimer, the Cringe-O-Matic is purely fictional. Please don't actually wear neon sweatbands to job interviews. Please don't buy this product. Don't be cringe. Thank you.
Oh, Jeff.
You heard it here first.
Yeah. That was the Cringe-O-Matic from A.I. Jeff. Oh, God, that was brilliant. Thanks, Jeff. Jeff will be back later on with a song. As if that wasn't cringe enough.
You can already tell what he thinks of tribalism.
Yeah, Jeff's not a big fan of tribalism, just so you know, in case you hadn't guessed. Wasn't meant at anyone in particular, by the way. Okay, where were we? So tribalism in wrestling specifically. So I think we can all agree this really ramped up in 2019 with AEW's inception. I think what happened was before AEW, WWE was quite bad, to say the least, shall we say?
Yeah, that's fair.
You've got that long period, haven't you, from like 2014 to 2019, where there were some good moments, but by and large, from a consistency point of view, it was just rubbish. And I think 2019, when I heard about AEW was going to on the horizon, I thought, oh, WWE are going to really up their game now. And it got worse. It got actually worse. So when AEW came along, obviously lots of fans still enjoy both promotions, you and myself, Kronus.
Yeah.
Whereas others will passionately argue on social media about why their chosen company is better than the other. But I think one important thing to recognize is that the wrestlers themselves largely don't get involved in this at all, do they?
No, I mean, you see them like little spats between wrestlers from different companies here and there,
Yeah.
but it's never really more than just a little tiff, as we say.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, some of them are married to each other, which
Yeah.
I think a lot of people forget about is, yeah, a lot of people's families cross this divide between WWE and AEW. Yeah, look at we've got Rhea Ripley, Buddy Matthews, Malachi Black, Zelina Vega, just to name a couple.
Yeah.
And even just last week, CM Punk posted a picture with Darby Allin and Brody King. I think I don't think wrestlers have ongoing problems with, well, CM Punk, maybe he does with the Elite, just a hunch.
Possibly.
But apart from that, like, I don't think they really have. Like Ricky Starks, for example, he's going to WWE, isn't he? You know, he's camping outside of Titan Towers as we speak, waiting for his contract to run out. But you know, I feel like his beef and most wrestlers' beefs who leave companies will probably lie with the boss. Like, you know, like Mercedes Moné, for example. She left because she hated what Vince was doing and she stood up for herself and she put her foot down, she left. But she's still really good friends with Bayley and Naomi and they still hang out together. So I think that's probably the most commonplace one. The CM Punk one is probably a bit of an outlier with the Elite. And we'll never get the full story behind that, thanks to some NDAs. But I think that's probably for the best when it comes to tribalism, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, don't really need to hear much more about it. I mean,
No.
it's shoot, as they say, so it's their lives.
Yeah.
It's not
Exactly.
work business, really.
Yeah. It wasn't on screen. It wasn't supposed to be done for entertainment. It was real life shit that has no business being on our radar. So I'm happy that's going to be kept buried.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of wrestlers will root for each other's success in other companies as well. Because the wrestlers understand that a thriving industry benefits everyone involved. And, you know, a lot of people who engage in extreme tribalism want the other company to fail, which, you know, is bad for the industry. It's bad for us. You know, we want more wrestling, or we want enough wrestling. Well, I think we've got a nice amount of wrestling at the moment.
Yeah.
But I think the common one is people wanting AEW to fail. And I think that's purely because out of the two, let's be honest, they're the most likely to, because WWE is just in such a strong financial position.
Yeah.
It's never going to happen, is it?
unstoppable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it doesn't mean AEW is in a bad position. It's just not, it's in a very good position because, you know, Tony's a very, very smart man. He's got a lot of money behind him. But it's not as, you know, WWE's been around for 70 years. It's got such a big foundation. It's expected it should be up there. But yeah, I don't think these people, whether they do understand or not, that a wrestling world without AEW, we don't know this for sure because Vince isn't here anymore. But if Vince was in charge of WWE and AEW went down under, then we'd go back to the old lazy WWE, wouldn't we? There'd be no competition, nothing they wouldn't need to create anything buzzworthy. They just go through the motions like they did for so many years.
Yeah, it's fair to say, yeah, it just stagnates when there's no sort of competition.
Yeah, and
I've seen it happen.
This is why AEW is good for the business. Also because it gives people like Bryan Danielson, Adam Copeland, Ricky Starks, CM Punk, other places to go to when things just, you know, maybe you want to move on for whatever reason. It's nice to have. Maybe TNA will get to that level again in a while. We don't know. I hope they do. It'd be good to have, you know, 3 thriving companies.
Yeah, I like that.
So tribalism in terms of the general world, like we said earlier, it does apply to lots of things. So I think the biggest one you could pick out is probably politics. Probably the biggest example of politics, but it also thrives in a lot, let's say, less important sectors. So you know how we mentioned brand loyalty. WWE is a brand, AEW is a brand. You see that in other brands as well, don't you? You know, are you Samsung or iPhone? Are you Xbox or PlayStation? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's strange how that sort of just naturally, and some of my friends, like, they're only Microsoft, only Samsung, never get an Apple. And I just find it really strange, but it happens quite a lot. And it's exactly the same in wrestling for some people. AEW came along 2019, and I think we all agree at that time it presented a genuine alternative for fans who wanted something different, like you, me, and every other wrestling fan probably. And fans of anything will develop brand loyalty, especially if they're into other sports. In America, it'll probably be a baseball NFL thing. Over here, it's a football thing. And I think a lot of what AEW gave to wrestling fans is that sort of different style that they've been missing from maybe old ROH or old TNA, etc. Whereas WWE became more family friendly, should we say?
Yeah.
I think we can all agree that WWE for a long time has kind of put the brakes on the in-ring action compared to other companies historically. Work rate, I mean. So you for example, you're not going to see an Ospreay versus Danielson match in WWE very often, if ever. So I can see why it provided fans who, you know, love that stuff. I can see why it provided that. It filled that gap for them, didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I was one of them.
Yeah, and so was I for a sort of point. I absolutely adored those first 2.5 years of AEW. Incredible. And this is where the brand loyalty comes in. So it's not just the brand loyalty, it's what that brand offers. So WWE emphasizes entertainment, lots of storylines, some good, some bad. historically larger than life characters like Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, and I guess nowadays you'd say Roman Reigns. A.I.W. heavily focused on work rate, in-ring action, athleticism, more sports-based presentation, which Tony Khan has said to, that was one of his main goals, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And fans who prefer one philosophy over the other, they tend to defend that choice vehemently. And there are sort of perceived threats, you could argue, from A.I.W. side. So I think in the first few years, A.I.W. had massive growth. They were on a massive hot streak. They were signing loads of, former WWE stars. John Moxley came in. Chris Jericho signed with them. Adam Cole came in. Bryan Danielson. And we were just like, whoa, what the hell is going on? This is the real deal. And it gave it a real sense of legitimacy. And they were riding a massive wave. And it could be possible that to people who are religiously obsessed with WWE, there may have been a time, especially when Vince was still in charge, they thought this could be bad for WWE because they're offering this and WWE is offering not a lot. So, and I think there was a belief when A.I.W. started they could one day be a challenger brand. And WWE weren't that hot back then, business-wise. There was, half-empty arenas. I don't know what the ratings were, but the product was not very good. And it was lazy, and it was boring, and it was repetitive. So if you're a WWE loyalist, you may view A.I.W. as a threat to your group, which leads to being defensive and being tribalistic. And social media just amplifies that. So we've spoken about fans who engage in heated debates, often fueled by anonymity. You see, a lot of these wrestling fans will have avatars of certain wrestlers. And that's a completely separate form of tribalism altogether, where you're tribal towards one individual wrestler.
Yeah.
Always thought that was a bit odd. And I think there's a part of the community that, whether deliberate or not, doesn't help. So online forums, certain podcasts, YouTube channels, they can be a big part in further segregating fans into us versus them. Media as well. I mean, the media is absolutely terrible for it in politics. Absolutely awful. To the point where it's like this is by design. Wrestling media I don't think is as bad, but there's always the potential for it to go that way. I don't think it will. I hope it doesn't. A lot of the big wrestling journalists that I read from always seem very reputable and, very fair. So I hope it stays that way. But there are certain things, especially if you've got vested interests in one company or another, that's where it can get messy. So if you've got a big platform and you've got a vested interest in WWE or AEW and you've got a lot of viewers, then obviously you might be being paid, you might be being sponsored to run a narrative that might not be true, or just, run your opinions as fact, which people are going to listen to. And then that then goes from the YouTube channel into their head, into their phone, on social media, and round and round and round we go. And it's very similar to, there's also a lot of fake news as well. And, we've been through the fake news era in the past few years. But it applies to wrestling as well. We spoke about wrestler allegiances. There's a couple we could name, Kronus.
I think Kenny Omega might be a good example. I mean,
yeah,
he's
that's
great.
good.
Disclaimer, I think he's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But I've seen people who will just defend anything he does simply because he is Kenny Omega.
Yeah. And he's built up a reputation, hasn't he, of being one of the best in the world, and that's surely how he'll go down. But you're right. There's a section of people who idolize wrestlers almost to an unhealthy level, where if you ever say anything bad about them, then it's a sin. You can't do that. Obviously, you get it. A lot of female wrestlers get idolized for various reasons on social media. Liv Morgan, for example, Dakota Kai, recent social media influx of support for her. And, it can be quite strange because that sort of transcends the brand loyalty in a way. Because theoretically, if you love that wrestler, then you might watch WWE more than AEW if they're in WWE. If they then moved, you probably switch your allegiance to AEW because that's where your wrestler is.
Yeah.
And especially wrestlers who are quite outspoken. Let's take MJF, for example. He's quite vocal on social media. And, fans who adore MJF, he's great, isn't he? He's one of the best we have at the moment. But they can rally behind wrestlers' opinions. And again, a wrestler on social media has a lot of followers. And it's very easy for people to just lap up whatever they say. At the same time, the opposite can happen as well. MJF posts something, you've got half the people supporting him, half the people, flipping it off with emojis and insulting him and God knows what. So I'm sure the wrestlers are used to it. Now, the biggest example of tribalism, I think when it spikes the most, is that rare occasion, usually once a year, where WWE and AEW programming occur on the same day. And it's happening again in October because of the baseball playoffs. So October the 8th this year. I think it was the same time last year, roughly, I think. AEW is being moved from Wednesday to Tuesday because of the baseball playoffs. Because that baseball playoffs are going to be massive ratings. So we're going to get AEW versus NXT. And do you remember what happened last year?
Vaguely.
Yeah. Let's just say it wasn't pretty. It was a bit of a horror show on social media. And Tony Khan was, should we say, at the forefront of this. Now, I think Tony's a great guy. I think he's very smart. I think he's done a great job with what he's doing. But I think this is the part of Tony Khan that I don't like. And I think some of Tony Khan's actions do fuel the tribalism, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, he's a bad reactor.
Yeah, and he's passionate. He's a fan.
Yeah,
right. He's a fan.
Fair, yeah.
But he's got to. Let's just go over what he said. So last year, NXT and AEW went head to head. Now, WWE obviously said, let's put The Undertaker on the show. Let's put Cody Rhodes on the show. Let's put Asuka on the show. They loaded it up because that's competition. That's business. And that is what most companies would do. They try and outdo each other. And NXT got a massive rating, and AEW, as a result, suffered in terms of what they're normally used to around that time. And Tony didn't take it too well, and he made comments about John Cena was on it as well. He made comments about Undertaker and John Cena, first time they've ever had under 1 million viewers. He called Shawn Michaels and Triple H bald assholes, and he just went on a rant, and you could tell he was gotten to, because obviously, Tony's a guy who prioritizes ratings, as you should when you're searching for a new deal. And it was a big blow because you don't want to lose to your competitors, and I get being upset. But what his comments brought out the tribalists in WWE, but it also brought out the people in the middle who said, "Hey, man, maybe you shouldn't react like that." And then they get lumped in with the tribalists, and you've got AEW tribalists and WWE tribalists, and these people in the middle going, "Help!" And it's just absolutely chaos. And you've got the media reporting on it, and round and round and round we go. And that's happening again in 2 months' time. So, tribalism thrives on this us versus them mindset. And it's almost like it's a need for some people. And, fans will perceive other promotions' followers as rivals to themselves. enemies. And sometimes it can go to quite unpleasant extremes. Now, you're not on social media as much as I am, for example, Kronus. But you do see some genuinely troubling things. You see some horrible things said. You see some awful things said. And
just personal attacks.
And the problem with social media is you don't see the effect of your actions. If you go up to somebody in the street and you punch them in the face for whatever reason, maybe they like A.I.W or something. If you punch them in the face and then you see them fall to the floor, bleeding, maybe crying in pain, then to most people, something would kick in to say, oh God, I shouldn't have done that. And you start to feel remorse. Maybe it was a spur of the moment thing. And you're there. You can try and make amends, can't you? You can pick them up. You can say, I'm sorry. On social media, if you say something horrible, because we know that words can have a big effect on certain people, if you say something horrible, you don't see the effect that has on someone. So therefore, you don't feel any remorse, etc. And in the most extreme cases, you don't feel that until, in some unfortunate cases, it's too late. So I guess if I was to give any advice to anyone who's, feels the need to engage in personal attacks on social media, is just think about the effect it has on someone else, because you don't know, because you can't see the other end of the phone. All you see is their reply, if there is one. It's definitely something to consider. You got to look after each other. We all like wrestling. That's the only thing that matters. So even though tribalism, even though tribalism is always going to be here, it's a perfectly natural part of us as a species. In the wrestling world, whether you like it or not, it's important to appreciate that both promotions exist and the contribution to wrestling as a whole. Chances are most wrestling fans got into wrestling because they like wrestling, not because they wanted to fight with people on social media. That came after. So it's important to remember why you got into wrestling. Wrestlers collaborate all the time and behind the scenes, don't they? You see, we saw Bayley and Naomi in the crowd for one of Mercedes Monet's matches in Japan, didn't we?
Yep.
And a lot of wrestlers live together. A lot of them are married. A lot of them had children together. It's not this big war between the two that is sometimes perceived as.
Yeah.
But it's inevitable. And it's something that I don't think this podcast is going to solve, but we can sort of hope, I guess. But I just thought it was worth talking about it from a slightly different standpoint, just to kind of get across the point that it is something that is natural and just some ways that it can be navigated. And I get it. I've been there from other things years ago when I was a proper tribalist cringe lord myself. I used to get very passionate on social media and I'd argue with people about XYZ. It just didn't do me any good. It didn't do them any good. Then I stopped. And, sometimes even now on social media, if I see something that's just really egregious, I get that feeling where I want to start typing, and it's not because someone says they prefer A.I.W. It's when somebody says just the most ridiculous thing. You think, right, this person is not allowed on the internet anymore. Those kind of things,
Just in general.
Yeah, just in general. A lifetime ban from electrical appliances for the safety of everyone else. I still get the urge sometimes. But just kind of reinforce it. The more you do something, the more it becomes a habit and the easier it gets. So it's something you have to kind of practice. And sometimes you have to deliberately expose yourself to something that makes you angry and then don't react. And if you keep doing that, then you won't react. But if you've got a blue tick and you need Twitter money, by all means, go ahead. I'm not gonna stop you. I respect the hustle, if nothing else. I think that's it from my end, Kronus.
Yeah, no, that was a journey indeed. But yeah, as you say, we're not going to solve it. We're observing it, and we'll continue to. But
yeah,
as long as wrestling is benefiting from it, which it is, a rising tide rises all ships, or whatever they say.
Yeah.
And it's true. Both are better because they're having to be.
Yeah, they push each other.
Yeah, enjoy what you enjoy. If you don't enjoy one thing, you don't have to shit on it. Just like what you like and appreciate that we're in a boom.
Yeah,
it's a
exactly.
great time for wrestling.
And, if there are people out there who obviously will do it for money and, they're just playing the game. That's all they're doing. They've identified an opportunity to make some money and they are taking it. So you can't really blame them. But what fuels it is the people who contribute to it and argue and get emotional for no reason.
Yeah.
By all means, have a laugh. I'm guilty of, I'm guilty of sarcastic comments and just things like that. But yeah, I hope at least people found this at least listenable.
Yeah, it was interesting for me.
Interesting would be a massive one. But let us know your comments let us know your comments. Yeah, let us know your thoughts on tribalism in wrestling in the comment section.
I'll let you know my comments and your thoughts.
Yes, let me know your comments in the tribals. What's that, Jeff? Oh, yeah. Sorry. Jeff's doing a mic check. So, A.I. Jeff, I'm glad he didn't do this podcast because he would have been a lot more aggressive than I was. So A.I. Jeff doesn't like tribalism. So what he's done, I've asked him to write a song about it. And what he's done, he's written a song about an example of somebody who lets tribalism go too far. And to be fair to Jeff, he's come up with a song about how he can help them. So, Kronus, let me know when you can see the old song.
Yeah, all good.
Okay, see this?
Yep.
Yeah. All right. This song is called Tribalism, and it's by A.I. Jeff. We'll see you guys on the next episode, which is our top 10 theme songs of all time.
Oh, yeah. See you then.
Take it away, Jeff.
Hey there, tribal wrestling fans in your mom's basement, watching WWE and A.I.W, no replacement. Your neck beards are legendary, your hygiene's a mess. It's time to step up your game, I must confess. You chant CM Punk and yes, but your job search skills, they're a hot mess. Your favorite wrestler's finishing move is the Cheeto grab, while you're busy tweeting conspiracy theories on your tab. Get a job, get a like, get some deodorant. Stop living in your parents' basement, it's time to vent. Your cage match ratings won't pay the rent. So put down the Mountain Dew and be more relevant. You've got a replica championship belt on your wall, but your resume's thinner than a cruiserweight brawl. Your mom's lasagna is your main source of strength, while you rage tweet about scripted wrestling's length. You think kayfabe is real and that's just sad. Meanwhile your LinkedIn profile is looking bad. Your dream job, professional fanboy it seems, but the real world's waiting. Wake up from your dream. Get a job, get a like, get some deodorant. Stop living in your parents' basement, it's time to vent. Your expert knowledge won't pay the rent. So put down the Mountain Dew and be more relevant. You think kayfabe is real, and that's just sad. Meanwhile your LinkedIn profile is looking bad. Your dream job, professional fanboy it seems, but the real world's waiting. Wake up from your dream. Get a job, get a like, get some deodorant. Stop living in your parents' basement, it's time to vent. Your expert knowledge won't pay the rent. So put down the Mountain Dew and be more relevant. Your favorite wrestlers' entrance theme blares, but your job interview skills, they're like folding chairs. You're a keyboard warrior, typing away, while the rest of us hustle, grind and slay. So here's the deal, my sweaty